This is Jellycode, and we will be discussing Chapter 4, focusing on the player. The player controls one character in-game, which is the Frog Ninja, and levels up after each wave, upgrading his stats to help defeat enemies. I'll be introducing 4 scripts needed by the player. First is the player controller script, which is used for the player's movement and shooting. Next is the player stats, used for increasing the player's chosen stats, as well as counting the damage taken to invoke the die method. The third one is the player health UI, used to indicate the player's health, which display it via a UI or user interface. Lastly, player projectile, used for the player's projectile destroying a game object, which counts as killing an enemy. Now let us discuss each script thoroughly. Player controller script has a lot of variables which are set to reference different components needed by the player, such as the prefab for the projectiles, rigid body, and creating a variable for its attack range. Moving on to the methods of the script, starting with the start method. It gets the rigid body component for physics-based movement. Next is the update method, which is used to call movement and shooting functions, which are the handle movement and handle auto shooting. Handle movement method moves the player, while the handle auto shooting checks if an enemy is in range and shoots automatically. For further explanation, handle movement method is used to, again, move players and to adjust its height. The variable raycast_hit, named hit, is a variable that casts a ray downward to find the ground. If the ray hits the ground, it adjusts the player's height accordingly. The input get axis for horizontal and vertical reads the player input on the keyboard, moving the player in the X and Z axis, or Z directions. Next is handle auto shooting, which finds and attacks the nearest enemy near the player. The variable nearest enemy calls find nearest enemy function to get the closest enemy, and if an enemy is within the attack range, the player shoots. The method uses an if statement to provide conditions to look if there are enemies within the player range and attack it. The find nearest enemy method gets the closest enemy. It finds all objects tagged as enemy, sort them by distance, and returns the closest one. If no enemies exist, it returns null. Shoot method is responsible for firing projectiles to the enemies when they are within the range. This method references the script player stats to count the instance of bullet count to know if the player upgraded the bullet count or not. The projectiles fire bullets in a spread pattern if the count or the bullet count is greater than 1. It also instantiates the projectile at fire point and sets its direction. Lastly, flash red method is used to indicate that the player takes damage feedback by making the player flash red when getting hit. The method also provides a delay before resetting to normal. It also uses coroutine, so it changes color smoothly. Now moving on to breaking down the player's stats script, an essential component that manages the player's health, damage, attack speed, and more. This script is attached to the player and keeps track of important stats like HP, damage, attack speed, and bullet count. It also handles taking damage and triggering the game over scene when the player dies. We start with a singleton pattern, ensuring that there is only one instance of the script in the game. This makes it easy to access player stats from anywhere in the game. It uses public stat player stats instance and if instance is equals to null, then instance is equals to this. This way, other scripts can simply call player stats instance to modify or retrieve stats. The increase HP method increases the player's max health by 20 and fully restores it. This is useful when picking up health upgrades or power-ups. The variables responsible for this is max HP plus equals to 20 and current HP is equals to max HP. It also logs the change in HP in the console, indicating that it works. Next, we have increased damage. This method increases the player's attack damage by 5 every time it's called. It is useful for upgrading weapons or leveling up. Increased attack speed makes the player attack faster by reducing the cooldown time. This is done by multiplying attack speed by 0.9, making attacks 10% faster each time. This means the player will be able to shoot more frequently as they upgrade. And if we want to fire multiple bullets at once, increased bullet count does exactly that. Every time we call this method, the player shoots an extra bullet per attack by incrementing the number of bullets being used. Now let's talk about taking damage. Whenever the player gets hit, take damage reduces their HP, decreasing the health or the player health using current HP minus to the damage amount. To make the damage feel real, we also trigger a visual effect where the player flashes red momentarily using the line of code player start coroutine player flash red. If the player's health reaches 0, the die method is called, using the variable debug.log, which puts a log in the console indicating the player has died. This finds the game over manager and passes the wave number to display how far the player got before dying. Then we remove the player from the game using destroy game object. Next, we'll break down the player health user interface or UI script, which manages the health bar display for the player. This script updates the health bar based on the player's current HP and ensures it always faces the camera for better visibility. First, we define a few important variables: health slider, a UI slider component representing the player's health bar; player health, a reference to the player's stats script which tracks the player's health; and main camera, which stores a reference to the main camera so we can keep the UI facing the player. In the start method, we do a few things. Get the main camera by main camera is equals to camera.main, set the max health to by health slider max value player health max HP, and initialize the health value by health slider value player health current HP. This ensures the health bar starts with the correct values when the game begins. In the update method, we constantly update the health bar's value to match the player's current HP with health slider value is equals to player health current HP. This makes sure that when the player takes damage or heals, the UI updates immediately. One cool trick we use is making sure the health bar always faces the player's camera so it's easy to see. The one responsible for this is transform. Look at transform position plus main camera transform forward. This ensures that no matter where the player moves, the health bar stays visible and readable. And that's how player health UI script works. It updates the health bar in real time and makes sure it always faces the player for better visibility. Lastly, we'll break down the player projectile script, which handles how projectiles move hit enemies, and apply damage. This script controls the behavior of the player's projectiles. When a player shoots, the script makes sure that the projectile moves in the correct direction, applies damage to enemies, and gets destroyed after a set of time. First, we define some important variables. Speed controls how fast the projectile moves. Lifetime defines how long the projectile stays before disappearing. Direction stores the direction the projectile should move. And damage gets the player's current damage value dynamically. We also get a reference to the audio manager so we can play a sound when the projectile is launched. When the projectile is created, the initialize method is called. Direction equals shoot direction normalize ensures the projectile moves in a straight line. Damage equals player stats instance damage dynamically fetches the current damage value from. And destroy game object lifetime automatically removes the projectile after a few seconds. Now for collisions. When the projectile touches an enemy, we handle two things. Knockback effect. If the enemy has an enemy AI script, we call apply knockback method, pushing them back. And damage application. If the enemy has an enemy health script, we call take damage method, reducing their HP. And once the projectile hits, we destroy it using destroy game object. Next up, Chapter 5, where we would understand everything about the enemy of the game in our roguelike game called Frog Ninja Curse of the Juicy Horde.